All righty, I am showing noon on the dot, so we will go ahead and kick things off. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the American Family Insurance Dream Bank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. My name is Andy Frisky. I am a senior coordinator with the Dream Bank team. On behalf of my entire team, thanks so much for joining us here today. As we get started, we always like to learn where people are joining us from and encourage you to go ahead and drop that in the chat section if you are comfortable in doing so. I am in the heart of Madison, Wisconsin's campus, overlooking Lake Mendota today. So very excited about that. A little bit about DreamBank for those of you who maybe aren't as familiar with who we are, what we do, and why we exist. So here at American Family Insurance, we believe that communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dreams. And that's why DreamBank was created. It's an inspirational community destination and virtual experience that is dedicated to dreamers everywhere. Our offerings are designed to help you celebrate the dream journey, to overcome obstacles, and to stay motivated. Today, I'm really excited to introduce our featured speaker, Thomas Eggert, faculty for University of Wisconsin-Madison, chatting about the evolution of green business. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Tom to take it away. Have at it, Tom.
Thanks so much, Andy. And thank you all for joining us either live during the virtual session or in viewing the presentation later on. I think it's a really fun subject. It's a subject that I've taught on for going on 3 decades, and trying to put an entire semester's class into a presentation was a bit of a challenge, but we're going to give it a go. I do want to encourage you using the chat, and I see people already are. If there are any questions, clarification questions as I go along, and I'll try and address those immediately, or if I decide it's not a clarification question, we'll still have a record of it in the chat that I'll get to then at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, let me see if I can make this go. Green business, which is the topic of what we're talking about today. I thought we better define it. So, committed to the principles of sustainability in its operation, incorporates principles of circularity, which just means waste equals food. Waste that's produced by one operation serves as a raw material for another operation in product or service design, and minimizes the negative social and environmental impact of its activities and products. I don't think we mean green businesses as just environmental businesses any longer. We've evolved past that. So we're talking about social and environmental impacts. So thus, green business is kind of, I think, the term that we have moved past. Even though it's the term that Andy asked me to talk about, I think we're really talking about sustainable businesses. And I argue that the greening of businesses is often synonymous with becoming a sustainable business. A sustainable business is able to balance people, planet, and profit. Sort of the 3 Ps are, depending on how people think about it, sort of thinking more broadly than just the bottom line, or expanding the bottom line to include people and planet. Then sort of the way it works, and with this idea of sustainability, a sustainable business is defined as a company that will last, a company that can maintain its value not only to its stakeholder, to its shareholders, but more broadly to society and to the planet indefinitely. So let's go back a little bit. So the Industrial Revolution is what, sort of was such a big deal. It put the United States in the position to be very successful. It put Europe in the position to be very successful. It tapped into the human potential for innovation, acquisition, and accumulation. It was marked by law-governed institutions to the extent that there were governing laws for these institutions, the power of market economies, and scientific ingenuity. So we're now part of this next revolution. We are, the Industrial Revolution is behind us. I don't know that there's agreement yet on what we're calling this time that we're in. Maybe it's the digital age, maybe it's the information revolution. I prefer the sustainability revolution, although, like I said, there's no agreement. This time that we are now living in is grounded in that shared experience of an imagination of millennials and Gen Zers. Why is that? because the baby boomers now are in that retirement phase. They are, I think the youngest baby boomer is in their early 60s now. They are not the dominant part of the workforce any longer. Millennials now dominate the workforce, and that transition has taken place. So as we look to the future, it's those shared experiences and imaginations of the millennials and the Gen Zers that will drive a lot of the change. So how did we get here? And here I'm talking about, this conversation around sustainable business or green business. So we started using the term sustainability first became part of the lexicon in 1987 with the United Nations Brundtland Commission. And that offered up the first definition of sustainability, which basically said sustainability meets the needs, a sustainable business or a sustainable society meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So think about that. We're saying we cannot say that we are operating sustainably if we are leaving people behind currently, but we can't improve the lot of those people currently that are being left behind if it means leaving future generations with fewer resources, fewer options, a less robust future. So that definition in 1987 from the UN led to President Clinton in 1993 founding the President's Council, or creating the President's Council on Sustainable Development. And its purpose was to recommend to the President a national sustainable development action strategy. So this is the Clinton administration, early 90s, following on some, cool stuff that was happening at the United Nations. Unfortunately, after the Clinton administration, the federal government didn't take up the sustainable development conversation again until 2015, when President Obama committed the U.S. to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So there's about 20 years where there was no leadership from the federal government on this topic of sustainability. So where did the leadership come from? Well, the World Business Council on Sustainable Development was founded in 1995. Sam Johnson of SC Johnson here in Racine, was one of the founders. And I argued that this marked the beginning of almost 30 years of business leadership on sustainability. The federal government should have been leading for a number of reasons, did not, and stepped out of a leadership role on this topic. Nature abhors a vacuum, so either nonprofits or business would step in. Business did step in, created things like the Global Reporting Initiative, which was the structure for business sustainability reports. Reports that were not required by any legislation, any regulations of the federal government. So these were voluntary reports. In 2002, business created this group called the Carbon Disclosure Project, which standardized how carbon emissions and carbon metrics were shared. So in the 1990s and early 2000s, the businesses that were sort of top of mind when we talked about sustainability were the, sort of the old favorites, Ben & Jerry's, Patagonia, Body Shop, Tom's of Maine, those kinds of businesses, which still exist today, but they were sort of they were cut out of a different cloth. But by 2005, GE had launched their sustainability program, which was called Eco Imagination. And I remember the Super Bowl in 2006, and there were Eco Imagination commercials run during the Super Bowl that put not only GE on, sort of very visibly on the sustainability track, but announced to the world that this was a topic that business can and should take up. At the same time, Walmart in 2005, this was under Lee Scott, publicly committed to these sustainability goals. to be supplied 100% by renewable energy, to create zero waste, to sell products that sustain our resources and environment. So with these, with these companies providing the leadership, GE and Walmart publicly sharing their sustainability goals, this got a lot of other companies to start thinking about, what do I need to do? How do I need to position myself on this agenda item? So one of the common ways to do this is companies assigning sustainability to a senior executive, and they began voluntarily producing a sustainability report. So we went from 2000, when the Global Reporting Initiative sort of said, here's the template for a sustainability report. So in 23 years, 98% of the S&P 500 produce a sustainability report. So if there's 500 companies in the S&P 500, 10 companies out of that 500 don't produce a sustainability report. Now, this is really interesting because they're not required to produce these reports. There is no federal requirement. There are no, requirements within industries for businesses to do this. They're doing this voluntarily. And why are they doing it voluntarily? So quick diversion. I taught the first class in sustainability at UW in 1994. And my focus was on, it was a social sciences class. So my focus was on, where was leadership coming from? How do we get more of it? How did these students that were attending my classes become, position themselves to become leaders in this field? In 2008, my class was a project-based class. One of the projects that they did in fall of 2008 was organize the first gathering of businesses in the state that were interested in sustainability. This was at Epic. We had 220 businesses come, and out of that, the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Conference was created. That conference has now taken place every year since 2008. This year's conference is going to be at the Harley-Davidson Museum on November 13th. But it became this opportunity for businesses to understand what other businesses were doing, what they were reporting, what they were measuring, how they were doing analysis on it, how they were talking to customers, who else they were talking about. It became this forum for exchanging ideas and information. So I posed this question before, and before we took that quick little diversion, why did businesses become the leaders on sustainability? So we talked about, the topic of this is the evolution of green business. Why would business become a sort of a prime player? So I think to answer that, we first have to understand, what are the prime directives of business? And I've way oversimplified this. But at its heart, businesses, to be successful, have to do three things. They have to grow revenue, they have to lower costs, and they have to reduce risks. Now, there's a lot of other things that business does, but successful businesses are good at these three things. And that ensures that that business is going to be successful over time. Sustainability addresses all three of those prime directives. Businesses grow revenue by better meeting the demands and expectations of customers. Customers increasingly are expecting the companies that they buy from to be sustainable and are changing purchasing behavior to reward more sustainable companies. So when you talk about the drivers of business behavior, probably the most important one of those is making sure that your customers' needs and wants are being met. There are no businesses that stay in business when their customers don't want what they are producing, whether that's a product or a service. So at the heart of all of this, business has to do what their customers want. With the sort of the rise of millennials, they have become much clearer on what their expectations of businesses are. So going back to those prime directives, we talked about growing revenue. Second one was lowering costs. In order to lower costs, businesses become more efficient. For companies that produce products, this means turning a greater percentage of raw materials into finished products and minimizing the production of waste. So you think about it, if you're a business that makes things, that produces things, it's a manufacturer. You have raw materials coming in, you have your process that makes a final product that you then sell, but then associated with the production of that final product, there's waste. Well, you've paid for the raw material. It makes no sense as a business to again pay for the disposal of that waste. So to become more efficient, you want to turn a higher percentage of that raw material into the finished product and generate a lower percentage of that raw material as waste, because that's just, you're paying twice and it doesn't make sense. As you do that, as you become more efficient, it also lowers your energy bills. Again, we're talking about lowering costs. So if you become more efficient, you're using less energy, your energy bills are going down, makes everybody happy. If you're producing a service, this means providing a service that uses less energy, maybe less time, requires less effort. So you're lowering the overall costs associated. And then finally, so we had what do businesses need to do? What are those prime directives? Grow revenue, reduce cost, lower cost, and reduce risk. Reducing risk can take many forms, from using changing climate data to better understand water risks, both flood and shortage. So if you're a company that uses water in your production process, making sure that the area that you're in isn't running out of water. That's why we've seen a lot of IT companies move out of the Southwest as the sort of the threat of drought makes it more difficult, and it's certainly more expensive to exist there. Then there's also other risks, reputational risk. Sort of probably the most famous example of this was the VW scandal, where VW had manipulated data on emissions to make their cars look more efficient than they were. And the blow to their reputation when this was disclosed was very significant. Billions of dollars worth of lost sales, where people wouldn't buy VWs, didn't believe that the company was producing a quality vehicle. And then there's the risk of future regulations. Yes, I said the federal government stepped out of the field of leadership in sustainability, but it may not step out forever. And in fact, we've seen interest in the federal government in regulating now the sustainability reporting, making sure that sustainability reports can be compared so that products or companies that are in a similar sector, utilities, for instance, that you can actually look at the data in their sustainability reports and say, yes, this company is doing a better job than this company in an objective, quantifiable way. So there is the prospect of future regulatory risk that companies are also very aware of and trying to be aware of and trying to prepare for. So in short, sustainable business practices are good business practices. And that's where we've evolved to. That's why 98% of the S&P 500 produce sustainability reports. The interesting thing about producing sustainability reports is once you get senior management committed to sharing information, that also means senior management then becomes interested in the information that they're sharing, which then puts pressure on the professionals that are doing the metrics development and ultimately, producing the systems that are being measured to do a better job. So the simple fact that we now have almost everybody producing sustainability reports puts a lot of pressure on the performance of companies to do better, because senior management teams know they're going to be being compared to other similar, to their competitors, to their peers. And you wouldn't think that something like doing a report would generate that much behavior change, but internally, it makes a huge difference. So let's look to the future, because we talked about the evolution of green business. What's going to cause the continuing evolution of businesses as we look forward? So, and I've got, I don't know, maybe a dozen different drivers of behavior change. First one is dramatic weather events, whether those are heat waves, fires, storms, droughts. They're all on the rise. Here at home, I don't know how many of you remember last winter, but it was really warm and not very snowy. Snowmobile trails never opened in much of northern Wisconsin. It was sort of this, I don't know, very local representation that things are different. So how does that play out? Well, I don't know that having no snow was a $1 billion snow event in northern Wisconsin, but from an insurance industry perspective, tracking the on a consistent dollar basis, the number of $1 billion storm events, you can see that in the 1980s, there was usually on average one event per year. In the 1990s, that had doubled to 2 per year. In the 2000s, that increased to 5 per year. There were 12 per year in the teens. And then you get into the 2020s, there were 22 in 2020, 20 in 2021, 18 in 2022, that should say. And then in 2023, there were 28 $1 billion storm events. I don't know what the average is going to end up being for the 2020s, but the most recent decade were the teens, and it was 12 per year on average in the teens. It could be that we're easily doubled that in the 2020s, and those are real dollars. So when you graph it, it looks like this. Certainly, this chart has a very upward trend to the right. The total, so at the far right, in 2023, the last year that's there, $600 billion of insurance claims that were paid out. So that's a lot. I just read an article earlier this week about why our property insurance rates are going up so dramatically. And we just went through this. So we just got our most recent property insurance quote, and it was up like almost 20% from last year. And I talked to the agent, and they didn't say anything about climate change. They said, "Oh, this is just the state of the industry, etc." But when you look behind some of that, this is the state of the industry. I just found out earlier this week. I think Allstate and State Farm, neither of them insure in Florida any longer. So if you had your property insurance through Allstate or State Farm and you had a house in Florida, you're now looking for another insurance company. And in fact, it's really hard to get insurance in Florida. They're suffering through a hurricane right now. And the state has had to step in and provide a state-run insurance fund to make sure that insurance is available. Because if you take out a mortgage, you can't have a mortgage. Your mortgage company is going to require you to have property and homeowners insurance on it. So another trend is legislation moving from command and control, which is the old way of dealing with environmental issues, the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act. You can't emit more than X parts per million over this period of time. And, there are a whole host of monitoring and reporting requirements that are placed on businesses. And we don't see that in sustainability yet. But we do see the federal government using another mechanism for moving society in a different direction, and that is incentivizing change. So you have the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed now about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half ago, that did more to move the U.S. towards a more sustainable future than anything before that. And they do it through dollars, and those dollars can both be rebates that you collect through your taxes or direct pay provisions. So money is now available to homeowners, businesses, and nonprofits. Nonprofits being the very significant addition, because nonprofits obviously don't pay taxes, so rebates don't work for nonprofits. Direct pay provisions do allow nonprofits then to also take advantage of this. For things like improving insulation, putting in energy efficient windows and doors, energy efficient lighting upgrades, energy efficient appliances, stoves, heat pumps, electric vehicles. So if you're planning on doing any home improvement, there is now cost offsets that are available to you, whether you're a homeowner or a business owner or otherwise, that had not ever been available before. What does that mean? Well, I mean, the demand for electric cars, this only goes through 2021, but it continues to go up, in all of the world, especially in China, Europe, and the US. There have been some, I think, recent announcements of car companies, Volvo and Ford, announcing that they are stepping back from commitments to provide an all-electric only electric options in the next X number of years. But it doesn't change the fact that the percent of new cars that are EVs every year is greater than the year before. What else is driving sort of business change? Energy. So in the last decade, wind energy costs have dropped 70%. Again, those prime directives of business. Reduce cost is the second one. How do you reduce costs? Well, you change where your energy is coming from. Wind energy is down 70%. Solar energy is down 90% in the last year. And interestingly, 80% of all new energy generation capacity has come from clean energy. And this transition is occurring much faster than expected. According to the International Energy Agency, in last year, for every dollar invested in fossil fuels, now about $1.7 are going to clean energy. And this is not just the US, this is worldwide. 5 years ago, this ratio was just 1 to 1. So we are seeing an increase in how quickly this stuff is being adopted. Again, you want to drive change, make it cheaper, make it easy, and that's what we're seeing happen. Also, you have the rise of sustainable investing. Who's investing? Well, certainly you've got some baby boomers, but they're mostly in the not investing stage any longer. You've got the millennials, you've got the Gen Xers, you've got the Gen Z folks, all that are now in the prime time of their investing, investing life. And for them, climate change and human rights issues have, they've driven a dramatic growth in sustainable investing over the last decade. And so how does that manifest itself? You've got the growth of green bonds. You've got ESG funds that are either mutual funds or exchange traded funds. You've got carbon credit investing. You have investors. And again, I mean, business should listen to their investors. If their investors are saying, we want you to operate in a more sustainable way, then those businesses are going to operate in a more sustainable way because their investors are one of their prime customers, stakeholders They want to make sure stay happy. And as you have this evolution of investors changing from sort of the baby boomers, my generation, that mostly just wanted the sort of the highest return, to a generation of investors that are saying, no, I really want other things to be equally as important as return. And it turns out, as you insist on those other things being equally important, the businesses become, as I said at the beginning, become better business. A sustainable business is a more successful business. And so you have, sort of the rise in interest in investing. Andy and I were just talking earlier. There's also some really interesting research out. So I mentioned the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is driving a lot of the change in money that's available for home improvements, business improvements, building improvements. There's hundreds of billions of dollars available through the IRA. So that's all public money that is being allocated out to the private sector. Those are businesses that are the beneficiaries of that money, and that money is driving demand. How do we as investors, as individual investors, profit from that? And I think there's real opportunities for investors to be beneficiaries, and also to participate in driving that change. Some examples in Wisconsin. In March of last year, Wisconsin Power and Light offered $300 million in green bonds that paid about 5%. Jefferson County has offered energy conservation bonds. MMSD, the Milwaukee version, Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District, offered the nation's first certified climate bonds. And so as demand increases, business responds to demand. And in this case, it's demand from investors for more sustainable products, and something like green bonds. Businesses will take advantage of that demand. So what else do we have going for us? So in 2015, the Pope really helped out a lot by, as I say, bringing worldwide attention, but more importantly, a moral dimension to climate change and inequality, issues that previously had been the concern mostly of activist scientists and politicians. So his manifesto asked that society, that people, consider how we treat each other in a threatened and divided world. So adding this moral dimension to the sustainability issues, to the green business issues. Why are we moving in the direction that we are moving? Well, this moral dimension is a big contributor to that. Impending water wars, and sort of wars, both wars in the more traditional sense of wars, and wars in the sort of the spending sense. So we are mining groundwater, redirecting rivers, polluting the oceans, with oil spills, agricultural runoff, mountains of plastic trash. All none of that is new information. What I found really interesting is that last year, $1.2 billion was earmarked for farmers in California, Arizona, and Nevada to give up access to the Colorado River. Why? Because Colorado River is the main source of water for much of California, for Phoenix, for the Southwest. And so farmers essentially were bought out with a lot of money to allow that water to be used other places. There is talk that a lot of the Mideast war is actually a war over water. It does seem to have a religious connotation also, but at its core, there are a number of people that have argued that this is a war over resources and access to resources. So we see more and more demand for less and less clean water, and how that changes over time. Um, there's this talent war, right? So every year we're graduating the best and brightest and sending them out into the real world. And where do they want to work? Time after time, we've surveyed seniors as they go out into the working world and asked them, what do they want from their first job? They want to work for a company that they believe is making a difference in the world, and they want to feel that their job is contributing to making that difference. So where are they going right now? Well, I mean, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, Apple, Trader Joe's, um, they're among the more or most desirable places for new graduates. They're also very highly rated sustainability companies. So kids are saying they want to go work for a company that they feel is making a difference in the world. Well, these are the companies that come at the sort of the top of the list. It used to be that as a company, you wanted to win the war for talent, you simply offered more money than your competitors, and kids would come to work for you. Now, that's not the case any longer. That you have to be able to tell kids, this is who we are, where we're headed, and why we're headed there, and we want you to be part of that journey. So I find that sort of the acquisition of talent argument really powerful, given sort of that every year there's thousands of kids that are coming out of college, and not to say that kids that aren't going to college aren't in that same position and don't have those same interests. So employees, so if kids are asking this as a potential employee, existing employees are saying the same thing. 69% of employees said they want companies to invest in sustainability efforts. That might be reducing carbon, using renewable energy, reducing waste, becoming more sustainable. So we're talking about new employees. We're talking about existing employees. We're talking about investors. We're talking about sort of the moral dimension of sustainability, of sort of doing the right thing. And then the costs of not sort of leading on this, whether those are weather costs or increasing resource costs or raw material costs or costs of broken supply chains where you're building a car and you just can't get some of the parts that you need because the companies that you're supposed to get them from aren't able to produce them, either for environmental reasons or other, sort of people reasons, supply chain reasons, all driving this push to become more sustainable. A lot of this I've talked about. So the number of millennials in the workforce, well, overall is now greater than the baby boomers. Certainly the number of millennials in the workforce is greater than baby boomers. There's a really interesting demographics presentation in the archives for the DreamBank that really, I think, is kind of eye-opening. And so you had the baby boomers post World War II. A lot of them had kids. There were a lot of kids. There were a lot of baby boomers. And those kids went through the sort of the aging cycle. We are now old, but we went through the stage of having kids, and that because there were so many of us, the generation of our kids is really large also. So there's the generation of baby boomers that produced the generation of millennials. And then after the baby boomers, you had the Gen Xers. There are fewer Gen Xers. They have produced the Gen Zers. And as the millennials, my kids, which are now having kids, that progress through, you'll have another large generation post Gen Z. My granddaughter, who's not quite 2, would be part of that, as yet to be named, as far as I know. But you have this continual sort of push, and every generation has sort of new demands and new expectations of all of societal's contributors, business including. As I argue here, millennials are largely motivated by things other than money. 2/3 of young professionals indicated they would be more likely to apply for a job at a company committed to sustainability practices, rate of highs that they want to avoid employers that they're perceived as having a negative impact. This kind of stuff actually does make a difference. So for those reasons, so we've looked at sort of where we were, how we got to where we are now, and I think where we're going in the future. And we certainly seen the last 30 plus years where businesses have led on the issue of sustainability. They continue to lead with consumer demand as long as the key drivers of performance expect businesses to act in a sustainable way. They will continue to act in a sustainable way. Those key drivers are employees, prospective employees, future employees, investors, suppliers, which are also sort of customers, and customers. And then you also have the added benefit of saving money. Those prime directives of business, lower costs, grow revenue, and reduce risk. So with that, I thought in the last 20 minutes or so, I've given you enough to hopefully pose some questions. And I know if you don't have any, Andy's got some for me. So let me sort of end it at this point.
Thanks so much for that, Tom. It looks like we got a question from Diane here. So other than CSAs, permaculture, organic farms, large corporate farms are on the rise and expanding fast, utilizing highly toxic and unsustainable practices. Any updates or your thoughts on that?
So sustainable agriculture is there's a lot happening in the field, both ways. So we know that the overall trends are still small farms are decreasing, large farms are increasing. And let me just take a quick diversion to talk about that. That's kind of our fault because our food costs less in the US than I think anywhere in the world. And we expect our food to cost no more than what it does. That doesn't represent the actual costs of growing that food. Why do we get milk that's, I don't know what the cost of milk is, $3 a gallon or $2.75 a gallon, whatever it is. Well, if you want milk that costs $2.75 a gallon, you need large scale dairies, and large scale dairies aren't letting their cows out to graze. If you want milk from cows that are allowed to graze, you're going to pay more. And it's not that there isn't demand from some people for a higher quality milk produced in a more sustainable fashion, is that that's not the majority of the demand. So you have the number of small farms continuing to decrease, at least in Wisconsin. Large farms, it's not that we are producing less agricultural products. Our production of agricultural products continues to increase, but it's done at the cost, I think, as the questioner expresses, at the cost of both environment and social conditions. And I would argue that we are the only ones that are going to be able to change that. Yes, we could say, oh no, that's the government's problem. They have to regulate better, create the proper requirements so that farms don't do things that they're not supposed to do. But it'll happen a lot quicker if we simply say, well, no, we're okay with spending a little bit more for our groceries, more akin to what is spent in Europe or Australia or Japan or other places. But so far we haven't gone there. And we talk about the need for more organic products, more sustainable food manufacturing, and that, inevitably it comes with cost. And as a society, we don't seem very interested at minimizing those costs.
Thank you so much for your reply on that, Tom. I want to shift the focus slightly, just as folks have some more time and opportunity to get those questions in. Here at DreamBank, we're a community that is built up of fellow fearless dreamers, and I'm curious, what's one piece of advice you have for someone who's actively pursuing a dream right now?
Well, so I'm best equipped to answer that question for for kids that want to save the world.
Sure.
And so if you are, a young person and you want your life to make a difference and you want to have an impact on the future, that dream that Andy's talking about, where do you go to make a difference? And I think still there's a really good argument that you want to really make a difference. Find a business, not necessarily that's already a sustainable business. I'll put a plug in for American Family, probably one of the most sustainable businesses in the state right now for a number of reasons, but partly because of leadership, really a very significant senior management commitment to leadership on sustainability. But you don't need a great company. In fact, maybe it's more challenging to go into a crappy company and make the arguments that I just presented. What we're trying to do is make this company last into the future. We're going to have to lower costs. We're going to have to grow revenues, and we're going to have to reduce risk. And that ideology, that sort of interest, I think empowers young people then to go in and speak the language of business, but also be true to their values. As I said, whether you're going into a high performing business or a small, medium-sized business in the state that really isn't very tuned into sustainability yet.
Thank you for that. Next question from Gabe. Kind of I guess building on off that last comment there. What is the most common method of companies here in Wisconsin demonstrating sustainability?
Well, I mean, so historically, sustainability was led, as the title for the presentation suggests, by an environmental focus. And so, I think the easy answer to the question is looking for companies that are leading on environmental issues. So are they, have they committed to, moving beyond carbon to all renewable energy, to minimizing carbon emissions, to even tracking their carbon emissions, and once they're tracking them to lowering them, to moving beyond plastics, to a whole host of environmental issues, minimizing waste, making sure that they're recycling water. So I think the most common steps that businesses are taking start with the environmental stuff. And in many ways, that's the easier stuff, partly because some of it is still driven by regulations. And that the part that's not driven by regulations, almost always it's an efficiency issue. If you're producing wastewater or waste, it's costing you to produce that waste. And as I said earlier in the presentation, that what you're paying at that point, you're not paying double because you paid for the raw materials that now you're putting out in your waste stream. And so you paid for them as raw materials up front, and now you're paying to get rid of them at the end. Anything you can do to, sort of maximize how efficient you are at returning raw materials into finished product and not producing waste goes directly to the bottom line and makes the, sort of the business more efficient. So I think, in answer to Gabe's question, it's the environmental stuff. The social stuff is a lot more challenging. And we get into DEI issues, we get into how employees are treated, we get into how communities are interacted with. It wasn't that long ago that Wisconsin had a lot of businesses that were very committed to their communities, the paper mills and others. And now we see far more foreign ownership of businesses that have little interest in their communities any longer. And communities are rightly saying, but what about us? I mean, you're here, we're here. We think you should pay attention to us, not only from an environmental perspective, but from a social perspective.
This next question might be a slight stray away from the business realm, but and that asks, electric car batteries How do you dispose of them sustainably?
So, great question. It will be done because there's money to be made. You know, uh, lead acid batteries, the batteries that are in all of our internal combustion engine cars, are, they're small, relatively small things. Try and get rid of one without, recycling it at this point. And if you go to buy a new battery, they they will charge you until they get back your old battery, and that whole infrastructure is set up so that the lead in lead acid batteries is recycled for a lot of good reasons. Lead is a extreme health concern. Very low levels of lead in water and other paints in the past, pipes in the past are a real threat. So we have set up the infrastructure to recycle lead acid batteries. As more and more lithium ion batteries are reaching the end of their lives, the infrastructure will, and I say with quite a lot of confidence, will be created, because there isn't that much lithium, and lithium is actually pretty pricey. And so you've concentrated lithium in these batteries. That lithium can be extracted and reused to make new batteries. The infrastructure will be created, and will be as commonplace as recycling lead acid batteries. I believe because there are um, business advantages to doing that. Um, it'll just take place. So I'm not worried about um, lithium ion batteries.
Tom, I want to thank you for kind of setting forth the foundations of kind of how sustainable or green business has gotten to this point, kind of where things are at in the present, and then a little glimpse in the future. So thank you so much for putting together such a wonderful presentation, and thank you all for taking the time out of your day to join us here. I commented in the chat, but this event recording will be shared to the email in which you used to register roughly about a week after this event. So expect that in your inbox shortly. Um, and you can always head to our website, which is amfam.com/DreamBank, to get a good, concise list of all of our upcoming events and programs as well. With that being said, we will go ahead and cap it there, and we will see you all next time. Take care.
Thank you so much.